The Galactic Council's grand chamber sparkled like a disco ball having an existential crisis. Crystalline structures refracted light in ways that would give any Earth architect a migraine, while anti-gravity platforms housed hundreds of alien species that, quite frankly, looked like the result of letting a 4-year-old design lifeforms with spare parts. Admiral Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of it all, fighting the urge to roll her eyes so hard they might achieve orbit. She'd been standing here for what felt like 3 eternities while the Council debated humanity's fate. The charges? Being too violent, too unpredictable and, her personal favorite, too adaptable. "The evidence is irrefutable," declared High Councillor Zix Beta, their translucent tentacles wiggling with what Elena assumed was righteous indignation. In merely 2 centuries since achieving spaceflight, humans have demonstrated an unprecedented capacity for both innovation and destruction. "They turned a cleaning device into a weapon," shrieked Representative Clicks from somewhere in the upper chambers. Elena suppressed a snort. It wasn't their fault some alien species had never conceived of pressurized spray bottles being used for anything besides cleaning windows. "They domesticated predators for companionship," another voice called out, horror evident in its harmonics. Elena glanced down at her wrist tablet, displaying a picture of her golden retriever back home. The goodest boy who ever lived, certified therapy dog, and apparently a sign of humanity's barbaric nature. Go figure. "Order!" Zix Beta's voice reverberated through the chamber. "We have reached our decision. Admiral Rodriguez, approach." Elena strode forward, her boots clicking against the impossibly smooth floor. She'd worn her formal uniform for this occasion, though she'd seriously considered showing up in a t-shirt that read, "I visited the Galactic Council and all I got was this lousy persecution. Humanity has proven itself incompatible with galactic society," Zix Beta announced, their voice dripping with what they probably thought was wisdom, but sounded more like a malfunctioning synthesizer. "You have demonstrated an inability to follow the most basic tenets of civilized existence. Your species delights in challenging established norms, questions authority at every turn, and worst of all seems to derive pleasure from facing mortal danger." "In our defense," Elena interjected, "have you tried roller coasters? They're pretty fun." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Interrupting the High Councillor was apparently another sign of humanity's barbaric nature. Elena mentally added it to her growing list of humanity's crimes against galactic sensibilities, right between invented hot sauce and does parkour. "As I was saying," Zix Beta continued, their tentacles now practically tied in knots, "we have determined an appropriate sentence. Humanity will be relocated to Deathworld X-427, colloquially known as the Grinder." Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly. Elena kept her face carefully neutral, though inside she was already calculating how long it would take humans to turn this punishment into an advantage. If her estimate was correct, they'd have a thriving resort world in about 5 years, 10 tops. "The atmosphere is highly corrosive," one council member helpfully explained, as if reading from a travel brochure for the universe's worst vacation spot. "The gravity is 1.8 times Earth standard, the local fauna is extremely aggressive, and the flora is mostly carnivorous. The average survival time for most species is approximately 4 hours. "Sounds cozy," Elena remarked. "Does it have a beach?" "This is not a joke, Admiral Rodriguez." Zix Beta's color shifted to what Elena assumed was their species equivalent of purple with rage. "This is a punishment, a sentence meant to humble humanity and teach them the consequences of their reckless nature." Elena stepped forward, and the entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. She straightened her uniform, cleared her throat, and delivered what would later be known as the "well, this'll be fun" speech. "Distinguished members of the Council, on behalf of humanity, I accept your sentence with all the gravity it deserves." She paused for effect, watching several council members preen at what they thought was submission. "We look forward to sending you our change of address cards. I assume our usual mail carrier delivers to Deathworlds." As the council chamber erupted into chaos, Elena allowed herself a small smile. They really should have learned by now. Humans had a peculiar habit of turning punishments into opportunities, and if there was one thing humanity excelled at, It was making themselves at home where they definitely weren't wanted. "Oh, and one more thing," she added, causing Zixbeta's tentacles to freeze mid-flail. "We're going to need the coordinates for any other Deathworlds you've got lying around. You know, for future reference." The sound of multiple alien species simultaneously experiencing existential dread was, Elena decided, actually quite melodious. This was going to be fun. The first human colony ship broke through X-427's atmosphere with all the grace of a drunk elephant trying to tap dance. Lieutenant James Chen watched from the bridge as warning lights turned their control panel into an impromptu Christmas display. "Environmental hazards detected," the ship's AI announced with what James swore was barely concealed glee. "Atmosphere is composed of 32% chlorine, 15% sulfur dioxide, and various other components that would make a hazmat team cry." "Lovely," James muttered, making notes on his tablet. "What's the gravity reading?" 1.8 times Earth standard, just as advertised. Though I should mention the interesting electromagnetic phenomena that's making my sensors do the Macarena. The ship shuddered as they descended through layers of corrosive clouds. Behind James, someone started humming Highway to Hell. It caught on until half the bridge crew was singing along. If they were going to die horribly, they might as well have a soundtrack. Their landing was less of a touchdown and more of a controlled crash. The ship's external cameras showed a landscape that looked like someone had given H.R. Geiger creative control over a planet. Sharp, crystalline formations jutted from the ground like the teeth of ancient monsters. The sky burned orange through the toxic atmosphere, and in the distance, something that looked suspiciously like a cross between a T-Rex and a praying mantis was watching them with far too much interest. Commander Olivia Drake's voice crackled over the intercom. "All right, people, welcome to our new vacation home. Environmental suits on, weapons ready, and remember, if it has more than 4 rows of teeth, don't try to pet it." "That was one time," a voice protested from engineering. The first teams out started setting up the basic infrastructure for their colony. They'd barely gotten the first habitat module deployed when they lost 2 environmental suits to the corrosive atmosphere. Fortunately, the people inside them made it back inside in time, though their dignity didn't survive the necessary decontamination procedures. "Anyone else notice something weird?" James asked during their first official colony meeting 3 days in. "You mean besides everything?" someone called from the back. "The gravity," James continued, pulling up his data. "We're adapting to it faster than we should be, way faster. And those mineral formations out there, they're not just pretty death traps. They're conducting energy in patterns I've never seen before." Dr. Maya Patel, their lead engineer, was practically bouncing in her seat. "The crystals are amazing. Do you know what we could do with these? Our power generation capabilities could be—" "Did something just eat the perimeter fence?" someone interrupted. Through the reinforced windows, they watched as a creature that looked like someone had successfully crossed a rhinoceros with a wood chipper attempted to digest their state-of-the-art security barrier. "I'm naming it Fred," Olivia declared, "and I bet we can train it." "Commander, with all due respect, what the fuck?" "Think about it," she grinned. "That thing just ate through our best metals like they were candy. Imagine if we could harness that digestive system. Plus, look at those eyes. It's kind of cute." James looked at the creature, which had managed to belch up what appeared to be perfectly refined titanium pellets. His scientific brain started making connections. "Holy shit," he breathed. "These life forms aren't just surviving in this environment, they're using it. The whole ecosystem is one giant processing system." Maya was already running calculations on her tablet. "If we could understand and replicate these processes, do you realize what this means?" "That we're going to need a bigger fence," someone suggested. "That we've just been handed the keys to revolutionary biotechnology, metallurgy, and energy production," Maya corrected. "The Council didn't sentence us to die, they gave us a gold mine." Outside, Fred had apparently decided the fence was just an appetizer and was now eyeing one of their shuttlecraft with what could only be described as culinary interest. "First order of business," Olivia announced, "is figuring out what these things consider food versus friends. Second order is establishing diplomatic relations with the local wildlife. Third order is making the Council regret every life choice that led them to this moment. What about the corrosive atmosphere? Someone asked. Oh, that. Maya waved dismissively. I've already got 3 different ideas for how to use it as a power source. This planet isn't trying to kill us, it's just extremely enthusiastic about natural resource processing. By the end of the first month, they had lost 0 personnel, though several pairs of pants had been sacrificed to various misadventures, established a working relationship with 3 species of local megafauna, including Fred, who turned out to be an excellent security system once properly motivated with mineral treats, and discovered 17 new elements that technically shouldn't exist. The alien observation satellites watching them probably had a collective aneurysm when they noticed the humans had started setting up a gambling pool on which impossible feat they'd accomplish next. James sent the first official status report back to Earth with a note that simply read, Dear Council, thanks for the premium real estate. Please don't check what we're doing with the megafauna. You wouldn't understand anyway. P.S. Fred says hi. The response from Admiral Rodriguez was equally brief. Keep up the good work, make them regret everything, and please stop naming the death monsters. We're running out of common human names, and I refuse to approve a Deathworld creature being named Humphrey. 6 months into humanity's exile on the grinder, the colony had evolved from trying not to die to thriving out of spite. The alien observation satellites probably needed therapy after watching humans turn what was supposed to be their tomb into something resembling a cross between Jurassic Park and Silicon Valley. Dr. Maya Patel stood in her lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing molecular structures that would make most physicists need a drink. She'd just finished her morning ritual of feeding experimental minerals to Fred Jr., Fred's offspring, who had inherited their parents' appetite for metals and inexplicable fondness for belly rubs. Log entry 147, she dictated. The biometallic integration process is exceeding all expectations. Turns out when you combine Deathworld biology with human ingenuity, you get something that makes the laws of physics file for early retirement. The door hissed open, and Commander Olivia Drake walked in, followed by what appeared to be a floating mass of tentacles and crystals. Maya, meet Barbara. She's our newest addition to the security team. You named a crystalline octopus Barbara. She likes classical music and can detect approaching storms 3 days in advance. The name fits. Maya watched as Barbara extended a tentacle and delicately picked up a cup of coffee, passing it to Olivia. Okay, that's actually impressive. Right? And watch this. Barbara, defense mode. The creature's crystals suddenly aligned into what could only be described as organic armor plating. Several nearby instruments started floating. Did you just weaponize the local wildlife's natural electromagnetic properties? Weaponize is such an ugly word, Olivia grinned. I prefer diplomatically enhanced. Lieutenant James Chen burst into the lab, tablet in hand and looking like he'd just discovered coffee could be mainlined. You're not going to believe this. Remember those weird energy patterns I was tracking in the mineral formations? The ones you said were giving you quantum physics nightmares, Maya asked. They're not just conducting energy, they're conducting probability itself. These crystals don't just ignore the laws of physics, they're actively negotiating better terms. Barbara floated over to examine James's tablet, her crystals chiming in what sounded suspiciously like agreement. So what you're saying, Olivia drawled, is that we've basically got reality-bending rocks. Better than that. James was practically vibrating with excitement. I think we can use them to improve our spacecraft. The way these crystals interact with space-time, we could revolutionize propulsion technology. Maya's eyes lit up. The Council sent us here thinking the environment would kill us. Instead, Olivia finished, they gave us the keys to technological advancement that their species never even imagined, because they were too afraid to study Deathworlds properly. A loud crash from outside interrupted their revelation. Through the reinforced windows, they could see Fred teaching a group of younger specimens how to efficiently process different types of metals. The impromptu metallurgy class had apparently discovered titanium was extra crunchy. Should we be concerned about the fact that our local wildlife is developing an educational system? James asked. Nah, Olivia waved dismissively. I'm more interested in the fact that they're getting better yields on mineral processing than our mechanical systems. Maya, are you seeing this? Already running the numbers. Maya's fingers flew over her holographic interface. If we can understand and replicate their digestive processes, we could revolutionize mining and manufacturing technologies. The colony's central communication system crackled to life. Command. The electromagnetic flowers in Sector 7 are spelling out words again. We think they're trying to teach us algebra. James blinked. Okay, that's new. Add it to the list, Olivia sighed, right under carnivorous vines that learn to play chess and atmospheric phenomena that hum in perfect pitch. Maya was already compiling data. The entire ecosystem is responding to our presence. It's like the planet itself is. Trying to help us, James suggested. More like it found some interesting new pets and decided to keep us, Olivia mused, scratching Barbara's crystals. The creature chimed happily. A notification popped up on their screens. Another scheduled check-in from the Galactic Council was approaching. Maya's grin turned predatory. Should we show them our progress? Not yet. Olivia's eyes sparkled with mischief. Let's wait until we've finished the new ships. I want to see their faces when they realize their perfect punishment gave us exactly what we needed to expand beyond their wildest nightmares. Speaking of nightmares, James pointed out the window, I think Fred just figured out how to juggle plasma containment units. They watched in silence as the creature demonstrated its new skill to its appreciative offspring. You know, Maya said thoughtfully, I don't think the Council quite understood what they were doing when they put a species of adaptable problem solvers on a planet full of impossible things. Their mistake, Olivia shrugged. Our advantage. Barbara chimed in agreement, her crystals forming patterns that, if you looked closely, seemed to be showing advanced calculus equations. The Council had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about their place in the galaxy. Instead, they'd given them exactly what they needed to rewrite the rules entirely, and humans, being humans, were having the time of their lives doing it. As if to punctuate this point, Fred chose that moment to successfully create a perfect molecular lattice structure through what could only be described as enthusiastic digestion. Did our local wildlife just crack advanced materials science? James asked weakly. Add it to the report, Olivia grinned. File it under reasons the Council should have read our history books more carefully. Maya was already calculating how to reproduce the process at scale. After all, nothing motivated human innovation quite like the combination of spite, survival, and the opportunity to prove everyone wrong. The first human ship built from X-427's materials looked like someone had given a cosmic horror an engineering degree. Its crystalline hull pulsed with electromagnetic patterns that made conventional sensors have existential crises, and its very existence seemed to be on negotiable terms with reality. Admiral Elena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the Galactic Council station, watching their faces as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in front of their primary viewing window. The ship didn't so much arrive as casually suggest to physics that it had been there all along. What? High Councillor Zix Beta's tentacles were tied in knots. Is that? Oh, this. Eleanor examined her nails casually. Just a little something we whipped up. We're calling it the HSS Spite, first of the Death's Doorstep class vessels. Amazing what you can accomplish when you're supposed to be dying horribly, isn't it? The ship's hull rippled, displaying the same kind of crystalline patterns they'd seen on Barbara. Speaking of which, is that a native life form integrated into the ship's systems? One of the council members pointed at what appeared to be Fred's cousin, happily processing space debris into refined metals along the ship's outer hull. That's Gerald. He's our maintenance chief. You weaponize the local fauna? Zix Beta's voice hit notes previously unknown to physics. Weaponized is such an ugly word, Elena smiled, channeling Olivia's particular brand of innocent malice. We prefer to call it a mutually beneficial partnership. Gerald gets all the space rocks he can eat, and we get instant hull repairs and material processing. Everyone wins. A series of smaller ships emerged from the Spite's hangar, each one demonstrating the same reality-bending properties as their mothership. They performed maneuvers that made several council members need to sit down. But that's not all, Elena continued, thoroughly enjoying herself. Would you like to know what else we found on our lovely vacation world? She gestured, and a holographic display activated, showing footage from 4 other death worlds. On each one, human colonies were not just surviving but thriving, working with local wildlife in ways that made conventional science curl up in a corner and cry, You expanded? The horror in Zix Beta's voice was palpable. Well, you see, after we figured out how to make the grinder work for us, we got curious about other death worlds. Turns out they each have their own unique properties. X892 has quantum crystalline formations that make our new FTL drives possible. Y771's atmosphere can be processed into computing substrates that make our best supercomputers look like pocket calculators. She paused for effect. Oh, and my personal favorite, Z115's local wildlife has developed a taste for the same kind of energy weapons your species use. They find them quite delicious, actually. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from various species were either trying to leave or attempting to propose immediate diplomatic relations with humanity, apparently having forgotten they were the ones who exiled them in the first place. "This is impossible," Zix Beta declared. "These worlds were designed to be uninhabitable." "Designed?" Eleanor's eyebrow rose. "Now that's an interesting choice of words. Care to elaborate?" The High Councillor's tentacles went still, the alien equivalent of a deer in headlights. "You know," Eleanor continued conversationally, "we've had our best scientists looking at these death worlds, and they've noticed something interesting. The hostile conditions, they're not natural, they're engineered. Almost like someone created them as weapons, then got scared of their own creation and abandoned them." She watched realization dawn across various alien faces. "The question is," she leaned forward, "what else are you hiding? Because let me tell you, if there are more death worlds out there, we're going to find them, and we're going to make them work for us, just like we did with the grinder." Through the window, Gerald finished processing a particularly large asteroid, belched contentedly, and reformed the ship's hull into an even more efficient configuration. "We're not the same species you exiled a year ago," Elena's voice carried throughout the chamber. "We've evolved, adapted. The very weapons you tried to use against us have become our greatest assets." The Spite's engines pulsed, creating patterns in space-time that looked suspiciously like a thumbs-up sign. "Now," Elena smiled, and there wasn't an ounce of warmth in it, "shall we discuss humanity's readmission to galactic society? On our terms, of course. We have so much to teach you about the worlds you were too afraid to understand." In the silence that followed, the only sound was Gerald happily humming as he rearranged molecules for fun. The Council had tried to break humanity. Instead, they'd given them exactly what they needed to become something entirely new, a species that didn't just survive the impossible, but made it their home. The Galactic Council's Grand Chamber looked exactly as Elena remembered it, ostentatious, overly dramatic, and now tinged with the unmistakable scent of fear. How things had changed in just 1 year. She stood at the center once again, but this time on a platform of her own design, crafted from crystals that hummed with barely contained power. Barbara floated beside her, having insisted on coming along as the official, diplomatic liaison between humans and Deathworld species. The fact that her crystalline structure could now generate localized gravity fields was purely coincidental, of course. "Members of the Council," Eleanor began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. "A year ago you stood in judgment of humanity. You found us wanting, too aggressive, too adaptable, too unpredictable. You sentenced us to death, thinking it would finally teach us our place in the galaxy." She paused, letting Barbara create a small light show of complex mathematical equations in the air around them. Several council members leaned forward despite themselves, their scientific curiosity warring with their fear. "Instead, you taught us something far more valuable, that your fears were your limitations, not ours. While you saw death worlds as places to exile the unwanted, we saw opportunity. While you feared the unknown, we made it our playground." The holographic displays activated, showing scenes from all 5 Deathworlds now under human control. Each one displayed achievements that the Council had deemed impossible. Massive cities protected by living crystalline domes, ships that treated physics as polite suggestions rather than laws, and humans working alongside creatures that should have eaten them but instead had become valuable allies. We've achieved more in 1 year of exile than your civilization has in a millennium of comfort. And do you know why? High Counselor Zix Beta, their tentacles now permanently tangled, managed to ask, why? Because we never learned to fear failure the way you do. Every setback was a lesson. Every hostile environment was a challenge. Even your punishment became our greatest gift. She gestured, and Barbara projected the terms of humanity's proposed alliance. The Council collectively gasped at what they saw. Yes, those are our conditions for rejoining galactic society. We will share our discoveries, all of them. We will teach you how to safely explore and utilize the death worlds you feared. We will help you overcome your limitations. And in return? Zix Beta asked, though they clearly already knew the answer. In return, you acknowledge that humanity's place in the galaxy isn't what you thought it was. We're not your problems to solve or your children to correct. We're the ones who turn your nightmares into innovations, your punishments into progress. Barbara chimed in with what sounded suspiciously like laughter, her crystals forming patterns that somehow managed to convey smug satisfaction. Oh, and one more thing, Elena added, her smile bright enough to rival a supernova. We're keeping the death worlds. All of them. Consider them our vacation homes. Vacation homes? Someone squeaked from the upper chambers. Indeed, Fred's family is particularly fond of X-427's spring season. Something about the corrosive rain being perfect for their complexion. The council chamber erupted into a mixture of desperate acceptance and resigned understanding. They had created this situation, after all. Their attempt to humble humanity had instead elevated them to heights they'd never imagined possible. We accept your terms, Zix Beta finally declared, their voice carrying the weight of a civilization that had just realized it was no longer at the top of the galactic food chain. Excellent, Elena beamed. Now, who would like to be the first to visit our new resort on the Grinder? I hear the quantum surfing is particularly good this time of year. Just don't mind Gerald. He's still learning the difference between maintenance duties and giving surprise tours of the molecular reconstruction facilities. As the council members tried to process the concept of quantum surfing on a death world, Elena shared a knowing look with Barbara. The aliens had wanted to teach humanity a lesson about their place in the universe. Lesson learned. That place was wherever they decided to make it, even if it happened to be in the middle of a corrosive atmosphere with reality-bending crystals and friendly monsters. After all, one species' death world was another species' paradise. It just took the right attitude, and maybe a few pets with a taste for impossible physics to see it. Now then, Elena clasped her hands together, who's ready to learn how to properly pet a crystalline octopus? Barbara's been dying to show off her teaching skills. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humour after all. It just needed humanity to help it learn how to laugh.